fucking room of extroverts, yet you're all as quiet as Rodney. I made notes for this on the plane last night, and I don't know what happened to those notes, and I don't even know what to say. You guys, most of you people here know me. I'm not usually at a loss for words, but I have been since Rodney died. I've been in shock and in denial, and even seeing him here, I still don't believe it. You know, it's a cliche, but I expect him to get up and sing some George Thorogood for us and tell us this was all just an elaborate fucking joke of his. I mentioned Rodney was quiet. I talked to some of his family today, met them for the first time, and I asked them, hey, can I ask you guys a question? Do you guys know Rodney had a band? And they were like, wait, what? And this guy here, I forget your name, I'm sorry. James. James was like, I saw this video just on YouTube the other day of him singing about getting a haircut and getting a real job. What's that all about? And I was like, that's just one of many times that Rodney fronted his own band, and he never told his own family about it. Then I said, did you guys know that I took him to England a few years ago? And they were like, no, get out of here. What? But yeah, right, Rodney's so humble. And you know, like, I've heard some stories about him recently, like, we play gigs with the Rodney Speed Experience, and people would come up to him backstage and be like, yo, you were amazing. And he'd be like, yeah, all right. Yes, Dave Hill, who couldn't be here tonight, a very famous comedian, played in his band a few years ago and wrote a blog about it. And one of the things in the blog, I was reading it, and he was talking about how annoyed he was of being able to play with Rodney. And this guy's a world-class guitar player, comedian, he's shredding all night. And he went back after the gig, he said, Rodney, how'd I do? Rodney said, you did all right. He also said he got off a stage that night and talked to these three girls in the crowd, these three really hot girls. And we were opening for the Gene Ween Band that night at the Highline Ballroom. He said he was talking to these three girls, and they said, we made up a chant about Rodney. It went, Rodney fucking Speed. Of course, very creative. But Dave went backstage and told Rodney that. Rodney was sitting on the sofa backstage at the Highline, and he said, Rodney, I met these girls out there, they want to meet you, they made up a chant for you. And he said, Rodney just looked off into the distance and said, yeah, that sounds about right. It's amazing how nothing fazed this guy. The only thing that ever fazed him was when I would try to like hug him and kiss him. He'd be like, Jake, stop that! Then he'd smile after a bit. We got a few pictures of him smiling when he was getting kissed. I also, James, I wish I had met you guys earlier. I had met Yvette, his cousin. Yvette and I guess, were kind of co-carers of Rodney over the years. We're, I guess, the two people who looked after him the most after his mother passed away. But I never got to meet any other people in his family, and I tried to. And you know, after my dad passed away, I stopped going home to Massachusetts for Thanksgiving. And a few years in a row, I'd say, hey, Rodney, I'm not going to see my family for Thanksgiving, but you're going to see yours. Can I come with you? I'd like to meet your family and see what your family life is like. And each time you say, I don't think that's such a good idea, Jake. I was like, what the fuck, man? But now I understand why he wouldn't do that. He was like, you're not going to let you blow my fucking cover. You know? You guys didn't know you had a Superman, right? You thought you had Clark Kent. You know, that leather jacket comes off, you put that guitar on, and that man could soar. I don't know if you guys have seen the video. There's a video circulating, but I got to urge people to check it out. And that was, we did a show at Wetlands in the year 2000, and we did this thing called the Super Jam, Power Jam, right? It was called the Power Jam. And we would have all these great world-class musicians come and jam and form bands on the spur of the moment on the night. And this, in 2000, we said, all right, we're going to get Rodney on stage to sing with the band. He'd never sung with the band before. This was what led us to him to starting his own band for him. We said, we're going to put this big band together, and we're going to drop hints that it's a real big artist that's going to show up at midnight. And everybody was like, at the club, 700 people sold out, and they were like, who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? They thought maybe it'd be Trey from Fish. Everybody was like waiting. So we bring Rodney up and got him this big black cape with a hood. And he gets up on stage and everyone's like, what? And he pulls the hood off and it's Rodney and everybody's just like, what the fuck? What the fuck is this? So he played one song. I think they opened with a Black Sabbath song. Then I did a little introduction, and the video's on YouTube. I'll make sure I get a copy so everyone in his family can see it. But the band starts playing "Smoke on the Water" by Deep Purple. And it's two of the guys from Mo, Al and Chuck, the two guitar players from Mo, were a big deal band. They start playing the song, and Rodney's like, all right, and they say, dun, 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 dun. And Rodney starts singing, and then, keep in mind, Rodney's never sang with a band before. He's got like a 10-piece band up there behind him. They're a few bars into the song, and Rodney just goes, whoa, 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 stop that, stop. And the whole band stops, and they're looking at each other like, what the fuck is this guy doing telling us to stop? And he just turns around, you can see it in the video, and he looks at Al, the lead guitar player, and says, it's in G! It's in G! And he starts pointing at the frets on the guitar, going, dun, 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 dun. And Al picks it up, and he starts playing it right, and then Rodney's like, yeah, he goes, yeah, now that's what I'm talking about! And leads the band through the whole song. It's like a 10-minute jam, and there's guitar solos, and Rodney's throwing solos to people. Take it away, Al! Take it away, Chuck! And then DJ Stitch was sitting in the front, started scratching this thing, going, oh, shit! And Rodney starts improvising, what'd you say, Stitch? And he's like, oh, shit! One more time, Stitch! And he was just such a professional. We saw him come out of his shell that night, and that's when we were like, Rodney needs his own band. And, you know, I would assume you guys were probably blown away by how many people are here tonight. Right? Yes. You were like, who the fuck are these people? It's you know, I'm glad you guys get to see this, and you get to see how much we all loved Rodney. I mean, and, you know, nobody plans to die, right? So this is a last-minute affair. I guess like most funerals are. But holy shit, all these people came out, you know, on a cold Tuesday night, a cold Wednesday night. It blows me away that you guys are all here. And I started making a list the other day of everybody who's ever played in Rodney's band over the years, because we're gonna do one more concert. And have everybody who ever played in his band come and play all of his favorite songs, and find somebody to try to fill his shoes singing. Probably just have a bunch of his friends come up and sing those songs. But just making the list of everybody who's played in his band, you know, I never had to ask anybody twice to play in Rodney's band. Everybody was like, well, the first time, right? You original guys back there, you know what I'm talking about. The first time, I think I had to ask you 3 or 4 times. But at the end of that night, you were like, yeah, when do we get to do this again? And then Rodney's band grew in leaps and bounds to the point where clubs couldn't contain us anymore because so many people wanted to play that at one gig we had 7 guitar players. Just because I put the word out and everyone's like, yo, I'll do it. And I emailed everyone and they all came back and said yes at the same time. So I was like, fuck, this is going to cost me a lot of money because now I got to rent 7 guitar amps. But no matter how many guitar players we had on stage, none of it ever fazed Rodney. We had a show at the Mercury Lounge one night where Ginger Wildheart, big rock star from England, came and was playing drums for Rodney. Rodney didn't care. I tried to explain to Rodney, I was like, this guy's a really big deal, Rodney. The fact that he's playing in your band, he's really famous. Rodney's like, yeah. I was like, no, he is. He's really famous. Rodney's like, yeah, but, you know, I printed out his Wikipedia page for Rodney to read so he could have a background of who this guy was, and Rodney's like, yeah, whatever. But for Rodney, like, it didn't mean anything, right? If someone told you something, it didn't mean anything. You could print out a Wikipedia page, but if he saw it in a magazine, holy shit, that was like God delivered it to him in the Bible. A couple of years later, after Ginger played that gig on drums for him, go to see him at B.B. King's, and he had just been at the magazine shop across the street blowing his whole paycheck, like he always did. And he says, Jake, I just got Guitar Player magazine, you gotta check this out. And I was like, oh, what's that? And he opens it up, and there's a whole like 10-page spread on Ginger. He's like, look, it's Ginger! Ginger's famous! I was like, Ginger was famous a long time before he played in your band, Rodney. But that night he was just playing drums in the band, and he loved Rodney. In fact, Ginger was with me when I got a tattoo of Rodney on my arm one day. Ginger was with me when I got that. Ginger actually got a Ramones tattoo, and that's why Ramones are a band that Rodney loved and that Ginger loved. But I'm bringing it back to that gig because talking about Rodney doing surprises and how many guitar players are in the band. We almost never rehearsed as a band. We would sometimes do a rehearsal the day of the gig, but Rodney would never come to rehearsal. The one time we got him to come to rehearsal, he was like, wait, where's the crowd? I was like, no, it's rehearsal. Why I gotta rehearse? I know the songs. No, I'm just coming to the gig from now on. So we're down at the Mercury Lounge and we're doing the gig. And in the middle of, I think it was Who Do You Love? He just turns to us all and is like, yo, break it down. And we're like, what? And he pulls a slide out of his Gene pocket, it slides like a glass thing that you put over the guitar strings. You play slide guitar. Very, very difficult. Very difficult. Most guitar players don't attempt it. And Rodney just ripped this whole slide solo, and we're all standing on stage just like, what the fuck? How did you even do that? You couldn't top Rod. You couldn't top Rod. You couldn't top Rod's guitar collection either. Yeah, you know, he's got a lot of guitars. In fact, if anyone wants to buy a guitar, yo, I'm not kidding, this funeral's expensive. We got 6 guitars waiting around the corner. 5, because I'm keeping one. But yeah, he was a man of surprises all the time. James told me that when I asked him earlier if he knew Rodney had a band, he was like, no, but I tell you, you know, he always liked music. He used to cut out a piece of cardboard in the shape of a guitar and put some string on it and just stand there in front of the TV and play it. I was like, that's probably about how he played on stage with us too, except for when he was playing the slide. And Backyard Bill, who's here, he played in every incarnation of Rodney's band, and he wrote something online the other day that said how fortunate he felt to play in front of like such big crowds at great clubs over the years. And I think the line, Bill, if I'm right, was you said you always played in front of crowds that were always unsuspecting but never unappreciative. And unsuspecting they were because I don't think anyone was ever prepared. Like, nobody knew who the Rodney Speed Experience were. We got booked because I'm a concert promoter and Rodney worked at a lot of venues and everyone would do us a favor for the first time. And then after they saw us play and they saw the passion Rodney put into it, like, we had no problem getting return bookings. But the crowds, we didn't have a fan base. Nobody came to see the Rodney Speed Experience, so they were always unsuspecting. They had no idea what was going on here. And then they see, you know, us fucking bozos come out there, and we always had matching outfits of these red track jackets and white pants. And we all come out, and we actually had an intro song that we wrote about Rodney called Who's Ready to Rock? And I'll sing it to you now, actually. We would open up and we would do a song to introduce Rodney, much like James Brown would do in the 60s, where he'd have his band play a song for him and then he'd take the stage. And it went R-O-D-N-E-Y-S-P-E-E-D, Rodney Speed, Rodney Speed, Rodney Speed, Rodney Speed. Who's the man we celebrate? Rockin' Rodney Speed. And then Eddie had this awesome guitar riff that went right, Eddie? Who's ready to rock? I am. Who's ready to rock? You are. Who's ready to rock? We are. Rodney. Who's the man that pushes that broom? Rodney. Rodney. Who's the man that cleans the room? Rodney. Rodney. Always on time, never in doubt. Rodney is the man that makes you want to shout, I love rock and roll. I love rockin' Rodney. Who's ready to rock? And then we just go through the chorus again, and Rodney was always embarrassed and was like, yo, you don't have to do that song tonight, right? Yes, we do, Rodney, and we did it one more time, too. But then Rodney would always run out and he'd do Born to Be Wild. That would always be the opening number, and he'd do that without a guitar, and he'd just grab the microphone. And it was always a pleasure standing on stage, watching the crowd watch Rodney, because they were like, wait, you know, something's not working here. Like, you guys shouldn't be opening for this band. And then Rodney would come out and he'd just grab that microphone with such a commanding presence and with a voice that just screamed, I love rock and roll. He would sing that song and then he'd put his guitar on and he'd lead the band through the rest of the set. And he'd always do amazing introductions to the band, whether he knew our names or not. More often than not, he wouldn't. And oftentimes, he'd be standing there, because it's always new players. Oftentimes, he'd be like, he'd kind of forget that the mic was on. He'd be like, all right, over to my right, that's your left. Jake, what's his name? I'd be like, yo, that's Scott Metzger. He's been in your band since the beginning. All right, ladies and gentlemen, from Runner, Scott Metzger. And there was one night that my friends all still tease me about because it was a night we recorded at the Mercury Lounge. It was the night that Ginger was playing that I referenced where he pulled out the slide and he started introducing everyone in the band. And if you know Rodney, you know sometimes it was hard to love Rodney because he almost never said thank you, no matter what I did for him, which was a lot. I joked the other day I spent more money on Rodney than any of the dozens of girlfriends I've had since I've known him. But I never got a thank you, almost never. Well, I would get it when I'd say, hey, Rodney, you gonna fucking say thank you or what? And he'd be like, oh yeah, thank you, Jake. So it was hard to know where you stood with Rodney. Like, the only way you'd know is if he would even let you talk to him. Like, he wouldn't always reply, but if he wasn't gonna let you talk to him, you'd kind of know it, because he just wouldn't even pay you any mind at all. So if he did like you, you'd understand pretty quickly, because he'd actually look at you while you were talking. He might not answer your questions or say anything back to you. And on the other hand, he would oftentimes just say things to you completely out of the blue, where you'd ask him a question and he'd answer with a completely different subject line. Tell you, man, you don't know about the Beatles. But so it was frustrating a lot of times being his friend, because there wasn't a lot of give back. There wasn't a lot of tangible give back. You know, like, I got frustrated in the last number of years, and I would try to say to Rodney, I'd be like, Rodney, you know, like get him in nice, quiet moments and say, you know, if I stopped calling you, we'd never hang out again, because you never call me, you never text me, you know. Every now and then, Rodney, I think it'd be nice if you're going to see a movie, maybe ask me if I want to come, because I always ask you if you want to come. And he'd be like, yeah, I get it. Never. Never once. I actually looked at all my recent texts after I found that he passed away, and it was literally a string of about 25 texts with no reply. Hey, Rodney, I'm back in New York for 3 days. You want to go get some dinner? Rodney, I'm back in New York. You know, Rodney, how you doing? Rodney, you want to go see this show? It's just like nothing. And it wasn't because he didn't care. It was just that Rodney functioned on a different plane than the rest of us. But that night at the Mercury Lounge, when he was introducing the band, it was one night. He didn't have to ask anybody's name, not even Metzger's. And when he got around to me, he said, and over here, this is the guy who put this show together. He also happens to be my best friend. Give it up for Jake. And I teared up on stage that night because I knew he got it. And a lot of my friends have used that phrase to me jokingly over the years since then. Also happens to be my best friend. And then I listened to it over and over the other night after he passed away, and I realized, like, he might not show it, but he knew how much not only I loved him, but how much everybody here loved him. And I know how happy he'd be. If he knew we were all here, which, I mean, he does, but if he could tell us that he knew we were all here, I think he'd actually say, all right, but we'd hear an exclamation point at the end of it. I think he'd be like, all right! It's like, I guess that's it. What else do you say when you lose your best friend? Oh, yeah, I know what else you say. Afterwards, we're going for drinks at 116th Street and Frederick Douglass Boulevard at the Harlem Tavern, and I'm going to have a Red Devil, because that's what Rodney would have like every third year on his birthday when he wanted to really get wild. So if anyone wants to come tell more crazy Rodney stories over there, I'm sure everybody's got more than a few. And yeah, so that's where we're going to be hanging out. I love you, Rodney.
Good job.